Alright, welcome back to my Factorio playthrough. So on Fulgora, I've got the scrap coming in by train now instead of mining it on this island, because I've used up all of it on the island. I've still got my scrap processing plants here. Got 4 of them total that run off of that station. I've paved the entire island, so it's now all covered in concrete. I've got a ridiculously overbuilt refined concrete setup here. I don't know why I thought I needed to produce an entire yellow belt of it, but it's there now. I've got rockets set up here that send the science packs and the electromagnetic plants to Navis. I've got an automated science setup here, still bot driven primarily. It should be 60 per minute. I built this massive blueprint to take scrap by train, process it, and then divide it out into separate train stations for each of the things that I wanted on trains, and then recycle everything that's left over and over again. But the problem with it is that it's massive, right? So it won't fit on any of these islands that I've explored so far, like even sideways or anything. So I've been sending out these rail paths, I've been building rails out every direction looking for an island big enough for it, but I haven't found one yet. I've started building a secondary base down here, and this would be big enough if it didn't have an island or a ocean lake in the middle of it. I do kind of appreciate that they don't let you just landfill all this. Otherwise, you would build pretty much the same as you do on every other planet. I've got stations around collecting scrap. This one's completely dead now. It was over all of this island. This one's nearly dead. I've actually been ignoring the richer patches and just taken some of the less rich patches. Might seem kind of silly, but I figure I need space more than anything. So if I clear out these patches, then I can just build over those islands. And these richer patches will be there later when I need them. I've built a design to recycle scrap on Fulgora and load it onto trains. My previous design was unfortunately way too big to ever actually build in the game because it couldn't find an island big enough. I've got 2 stations that take scrap via train, take 2 green belts from each one, run it through the recyclers here, and then it gets sorted using these little sorters into the different types of materials that I care about. I use this little 3 splitter setup so that if the outgoing belt here gets backed up, it doesn't block the flow of stuff up the belt. You can see here the ice is backed up, but it's going past anyway. And so these splitters are in pairs of 4 that then come over here and get loaded onto trains. And so each car on the train gets a different material. I've never really done this before, at least not for a long time. I tend to like my trains to just carry a single material each, but this was a good way to save space. You can see I've got them named that way as well. Each one's named with the 4 different components that they take. And then any excess that doesn't get filtered out or that's backed up comes up here, gets recycled again, and then the output of that loops back around and joins in with the input here. So I'm pretty happy with it. At least I was able to fit it in the world. I've been building more scrap mining places here. I might have to start taking some of these big ones soon because these little ones just run out so fast. I have to just keep tearing them down and building new ones all the time. The new base down here, I've got some concrete paving done. Got a bunch more accumulators. I've got this new rocket fuel setup. It occurred to me after I built the one up at the other island that I don't actually need to make solid fuel because I've got it from scrap. Alright, so I thought I had the recycler situation on Fulgora sorted out, but I'm not real familiar with double-headed trains, so it didn't occur to me that with the cars being used for different materials, if the train got turned around, we'd have this mix-up. So this is a problem. What I could do is sort of filter it so that it would be half one type and half the other type, and then use filter inserters everywhere that unloads it. So I could do that, but instead of doing that, I just redesigned it. So I made this thing here. It operates by the same principle. Takes the scrap in, recycles it, sorts it using these special triple splitters so that it doesn't get backed up. But now these come into very slim stations that just have a single material per station, like I'm used to, but it just has a small amount of buffered capacity, no balancer. I kind of like my stations to always have balanced inputs, but just between the space and the other problems, there was no way to make that happen. I did set the stack size of these inserters. So these have a low stack size, and then it goes up as it goes farther left in order to hopefully balance the inputs a little bit better. I also added something. So I've got green wires connecting all the chests, and then that comes into this combinator that checks if the input is greater than 10,000. I just kind of picked 10,000. And if so, it puts an F, a 1F output onto the red wire here. And this red wire comes down here. It adds up all the inputs. And so right now we have an F of 4. And that attaches to these belts. And then if all the stations are full, then it shuts off the belt. That way it'll stop chewing through scrap if all the stations have some input in them. So at least this cleans up the unloading stations. So on the other end of this, it doesn't need to do anything special. It can just use my standard unloading design. So that's a big benefit over the combined stations, in my opinion. I've designed an upgraded green circuit factory. So this one, it takes molten iron, molten copper, produces 4 green belts of green circuits. So it's got these foundries that produce the iron plates, foundries that produce the copper wire, and then the electromagnetic plants producing the circuits. Everything has modules in it. Tier 2 modules, because I don't have the Tier 3s yet. So 4 of those lines to produce the 4 belts. Then I've got essentially the same thing on Vulcanus, but modified for the single lane rail network that I'm using. So So, same thing, molten iron, molten copper, or green belts of green circuits. My Vulcanus base ran out of power. I've got these sulfuric acid to steam plants. I've got a bunch of them, but they're not working now because they're super low power. In fact, we're only producing 60 megawatts out of 11 gigawatts that are being requested. It crashed really hard. I think it's because I was adding the new circuit builds with a lot of electromagnetic plants with modules in them. So you can see here the electromagnetic plants were using most of the power before it crashed. Yeah, it happened right as I tried to start paving with concrete. So I canceled a bunch of the concrete, but it wasn't enough. And then I tried to paste down some solar panels. Probably too much, but it doesn't really matter because none of them got built because the bots are completely locked up now. The only source of power are just these tiny little patch of solar panels here. I can travel back to Vulcanus myself. Emergency debugging trip. Hey, dropping down to Vulcanus. Okay. I gotta steal some bots. There we go. Oh, I forgot to grab the substations. Okay, that's slightly better. Then the Millennium Falcon back to Navis for more solar panels and accumulators. Okay, we seem to be stabilized again. Went through the night without using any of the accumulators even. Steam power, or sulfuric acid steam power is back online. Full steam buffers. Okay, before turning all the stations back on, though, I'll go ahead and build some more. Okay, so I've doubled the number of power plants. So I built 2 new ones down here, 2 new ones up here. So my total power should be double what it was before, plus the new solar panels. So now I can try enabling everything again. Alright, looks like that solved the problem. I'll keep an eye on it, though, from now on. So I built an upgraded red circuit station. Takes molten copper, plastic, and green circuits. Produces 2 red belts of red circuits. Uses the foundries to create copper wire. then the electromagnetic plants to produce the red circuits. Everything uses the Tier 2 modules. Then I've got the same station set up for Vulcanus with a single rail network. So it takes the inputs just the same as on Navis and produces the circuits with the Tier 2 modules. I didn't feel like building with beacons for these stations, but probably my next upgrade for these I'll use beacons, and then I'll produce like 12 green belts of red circuits or something crazy like that. Alright, following on from last episode, I've started using trains to retrieve the materials from the recycling station. I was going to build a full science station, but it was just too big and it wouldn't fit anywhere. So I built a station to produce the holmium solution. Just takes the raw materials, the ore, produces the solution in chemical plants, puts that on trains. I've got a station to produce the holmium plates. Takes the solution, provides the plates. I've got one for the electrolyte. Takes the holmium solution stone, produces electrolyte. Some electromagnetic plants. Also got a little rocket fuel station down here. Just needs ice and then pumps the oil out. And this beast down here is the supercapacitor station. It just has so many ingredients. Ice and copper and plastic and holmium plates and green circuits and batteries and electrolyte. I'm just using a 1-1 train for the supercapacitors. Be kind of crazy to have a 1-4 train full of them at this stage. Finally, here is the science station. Takes batteries and iron for the accumulators, supercapacitors, holmium solution electrolyte. Has a little 1-4 train of the science packs. This setup should be about 135 science per minute, I think, assuming that it was able to get all the input materials, which it doesn't seem to right now. And then finally, we have our rocket station. Takes the rocket ingredients and the science pack. Has a bunch of rockets with bots to load the rockets. So you might be wondering, why did I put all this time and effort into making a science, or making a train-based science setup, when this little island that I threw together in the first hour, that's just bot-based, has been churning out science this entire time? And I even made a second island down here pretty quickly to do the same kind of setup, just to have extra science. And these two islands have been producing all of my science, all of my Fulgora science this entire time, with really no trouble. So, yeah, why go to the trouble of rebuilding it to be train-based? I asked myself the same question about halfway through, but I was already committed, so I finished it. I did want this playthrough to be all about trains, But, you know, I definitely could have waited till I had foundation to do a train base on Fulgora, but oh well. It's done now. So next episode, we're going to be landing on Gleba and building a base there. Thanks for watching.